Hey, what's up? My name is Norris, and we're here again with a sew along using Mimi G's pattern 8615. Now, this is a men's pattern, and we're going to be doing view A, the jumpsuit. Let's get started. Okay, so for those that are new to sewing and just need a refresher course, be sure to visit the Sewing Basics video linked in the description box below. Okay, so before getting started, you're gonna need the pattern, of course, 8615, the Mimi G men's pattern, and we're doing view A, like I said, it's the vintage jumpsuit. So if you look on the back, you'll see fabric choices, notions, and also sizing. Be sure to visit the finished garment chart at the very bottom. This is let you know how your garment is gonna fit once you sew it all up. Okay, so let's go over all the pattern pieces you're gonna need with this pattern. You're going to need pattern piece number 2, which are the upper pockets. You're gonna cut 2 of these. You're going to need pattern piece number 9, which is the front facing, and you need 2 of these, and then you need to cut 2 outer end facing as well. Pattern piece number 4, which is the lower pocket facing, you're going to need to cut 2 of these out of fabric and also interfacing. Pattern piece number 10, which is the sleeve, you're going to cut 2. Pattern piece number 8, which is the collar, you're going to cut 2 of these on the fold, which is right here, and you're going to cut 1 outer interfacing on the fold as well. Pattern piece number 3, which is the lower pocket, you're going to cut 2 of these. Pattern piece number 6 is the back yoke. You're going to cut 1 of these on the fold. The fold is right here. Pattern piece number 7 is the carrier. It's the back carrier. It's basically the back belt loop. And you're going to cut 1 of these. Pattern piece number 11, which is the belt. You're going to cut 2 of these and 1 outer interfacing. You're also going to need pattern piece number 5, which is the back. You're going to cut 2 of these. And then last but not least, you're going to need 2 of pattern piece number 1, and this is the front. You're also going to need a 22-inch zipper for the front, and you're going to need a 2-inch belt buckle. This is for the belt. And then for the belt holes, you can use eyelets, which looks like this, or you can make holes. And I like to take a hole punching tool to make perfect holes for the belt buckle. So you have 2 options. You can make the holes or you can use eyelets. You're also going to need coordinating thread. And once you have all of your pattern pieces cut out of fabric and the ones interface that needs to be, we can begin sewing. Okay, so first I'm working with my fronts right now. And before we get started, you want to go to your machine and you want to do a basting stitch from the front and to that little dot. You should have transferred all your markings and then down about 1 inch. That's to secure that little corner right here. So once you do that, you can also serge the inside of the crotch right here because you won't be able to go back and do it later. So once you do that and come back, you want to put them right sides together, and we're going to pin at that little dot right there. And then we're going to continue pinning down the crotch. So you want to head to your sewing machine, and we're going to stitch this down using 5/8 of an inch seam allowance. So we're going to start at the bottom of the crotch, and we're going to end right there where that dot is, using 5/8 of an inch seam allowance. Okay, before we get started, we're going to be using 5/8 of an inch seam allowance, and we're going to backstitch at the beginning and end. And we're going to back stitch and stop right there at that dot. Okay, once we have the center crotch stitched down, we're going to take your scissors and we're going to cut right into that corner right there. And remember, try not to cut through the stitching. Just like that. Give us a good press, and we're going to continue. Okay, so now we're going to work on our pockets. So what you're going to do is you're going to turn wrong sides touching a 1/4 inch at the very top, and you're going to give it a good press. And once you do that, we're going to turn right sides facing at your fold line, and we're going to stitch using 5/8 of an inch seam allowance all the way around. Okay, now that we have the 1/4 inch pressed on wrong sides facing, and with right sides facing, we have it folded over at the fold line. So I'm going to start on one side, and using 5/8 of an inch seam allowance, I'm going to stitch all the way around except for across the top. Alright, once you get to the corner, we want to turn and pivot and continue. Pivot again. And then back stitch at the end. Okay, now that we have them stitched all the way around, we're going to cut some of this top part off about a 1/4 inch away, just to remove some of that bulkiness when we turn it right side out. Okay, next what we're gonna do is take the top and turn it right side out, and then use a sharp object, but don't go through the garment. I like to use my point turner. And then once you do that, you're going to press right where we stitched that all the way around. Once you get us a good press for both, come back and we'll continue. Okay, now that we have both pockets good and pressed, we're going to do top stitching across the top of both of them. And we're going to start about 1 inch away, just so we can catch the bottom of that fold right there. We're going to do it all the way across. And then 1/4 or 3/8 of an inch away, depending on your preference of top stitching, we're going to do another row right beside the first one. Do that and come back and we'll continue. Okay, now that we have both top stitch with 2 rows of top stitching across the top, we're going to take these and place them onto our fronts. Okay, so only working on one side of our fronts at the time, we're going to take one of your pockets, and you should have 2 little dots right here that you should have transferred over to your fabric. So you want to put the top of that right between the 2, and we're going to pin. So okay, so once you have them pinned, you want to edge stitch it all the way around, not across the top. And then after you do the first row, you want to do another second row, the same as you did the 2 right here. Either 1/4 inch or 3/8 of an inch, all the way around from the first one. Once you do both, come back and we'll continue. Okay, now that our top pockets are attached to our fronts with 2 rows of top stitching all the way around, we're going to move along to our lower pockets. Okay, so before we move along to our lower pocket, we're going to prep our facing. This should be interface, as you can see. It's my right side, it's my wrong side, and it's interfacing. And you want to turn in 1/4 of an inch on the curved edge right here. So once you do that, you want to turn it to the right side, and you're going to top stitch it slightly away from the edge, all the way down. Once you do that, come back and we'll continue. All right? So once you do that, you're going to turn it right sides facing to your lower pocket, and we're going to pin here, across the top, and around and down here. Okay, so once you have it all pinned, we're going to stitch using 5/8 of an inch seam allowance along this edge, up here, across the top, and then down the bottom right here. Once you do that, we're going to come back. Okay, we're going to back stitch at the beginning and end, and once again, we're using a 5/8 of an inch seam allowance. Once you get to that corner, you're going to pivot and turn. I need to do a little bit more. There we go. So just test it first. Pivot one more time. and then last here. Okay, so once we get here, we're going to continue to stitch 5/8 of an inch all the way down. Pivot, and then sew across the bottom. You're gonna sew your other lower pocket and facing the same exact way. Okay, now that you stitched the facing to both pockets and you did stitching down the long side and across the bottom, we're going to take your scissors and right there where that dot should be at, you're going to clip, and remember not to clip into your stitching. And once you do that, you're going to clip your corners. I'm gonna do a little bit extra right here so it won't be so bulky. And right here. And then you're gonna turn it right side out. And once you get it like this, you're gonna turn and press across the long side and then turn up on the bottom where your stitching is and press there as well. Once you give this one a good press and turn and clip and press the other one the same exact way, we're gonna continue. Okay, now that we have our lower pockets turned over and gave them a good press, we're going to do some edge stitching. So starting here, we're going to edge stitch right here, then we're gonna pivot and then down this side right here. And then we're gonna cut the thread and then we're gonna do another row, a 1/4 inch or 3/8 of an inch, depending on what you've been doing so far. We're gonna do that away from the first stitching line, following the same path. Now once you do that, we're gonna come over here and then we're only going to top stitch from the top to right here, basically where this point right here meets. So edge stitch there and then a 1/4 inch or 3/8 of an inch away, we're going to do a second row. We're not going to go all the way down. We're only going to do it here and then around down this side and then along this edge as well. Okay, first we're going to start along the slanted side and we're going to edge stitch back to the beginning. I'm going to pivot and then continue to the end. Then back stitch at the end. And then we're going to do a second row. So I've been using a 1/4 inch away from my first one. So I'm going to continue doing that. If you've been using 3/8, continue with 3/8 of an inch. And then we're going to come over here to the top portion of the other side, edge stitch, and then we're going to back stitch, cut your thread, and do another line of top stitching, a 1/4 inch or 3/8 of an inch away from the first one. Stop in the same place. Okay, so once you top stitch here and down, and then from here up, you're going to do the other one the same exact way, and we'll continue. Okay, so once you have it top stitch here, and then also here, we're going to put it wrong side facing the right side of your front piece, and we're only working on one side right now. And what we're going to do is we're going to pin once at the top, then we're going to pin along this side right here and then across the bottom. Remember, you have 2 dots here and then also 2 dots here, just so you know where to line this up. And what we're going to do is we're going to start where we left off, right on these stitches, and do the same thing. Edge stitch down across the bottom, and then a second row away from that one, and then across the bottom. And then we're going to do one edge stitch across the top, and then we'll do one across the middle right here. Once you do that, we're going to come back and we're going to continue. Do that for both pockets. Okay, so once you have your 2 rows of top stitching down this side and across the bottom, and then the one across the top, and then right here on both sides, we're going to put this aside for just a moment and we're going to work on our back. Okay, now starting on the back, as you can see, I went ahead and serged the inside seam and also along the bottom. And what we're going to do now is just with right sides facing, we're going to pin along the back and we're going to stitch. So first let's pin. You should have 3 notches indicating that it's the back. Match those up first and pin, and then continue. Okay, once you're done pinning, we're going to stitch using 5/8 of an inch all the way across. Once you do that, come back and we'll continue. Okay, now that we have it stitched all the way down, we're going to make a couple of clips in this curve right here. So without cutting through your actual stitch, you want to just make some clips like that, and maybe one more here. All right, now we're going to head over to the iron board. Open this up just like this. Open up this seam and give it a good press all the way up. Okay, now that we have the back seam pressed, we're going to take the back yoke and we're going to pin it to the back. Pin at your double notches first. You should have 2 on both sides. Right here. Okay, now we're going to head over to the sewing machine. We're going to stitch using 5/8 of an inch all the way across. And once you do that, come back and we'll continue. Okay, as you can see, I stitched all the way across, and then I serged the top of it just to have a clean finish on the inside. And then I went ahead and pressed my seams up. All right, so after I did that, you flip it over to the side, and I did my 2 rows of top stitching. I stitched very close to the seam right there, and then I did another one 1/4 inch away. Like I said, if you're doing 3/8 of an inch away, you can continue doing that, but I'm doing 1/4 inch all the way. So once you get done with that, we're going to take our front and with right sides facing, we're going to pin at the shoulders. So just match up your notches. You should have a notch on both sides. All right, so just head over to your machine and we're going to stitch using 5/8 of a seam allowance on both sides. Once you do that, come back and we'll continue working. So I went ahead and I stitched across both sides of the shoulders, and I also serged the raw edge, and I pressed the seam backwards towards the back. Put this to the side for just a second. We're going to come right back to it. Okay, so now we're going to be working on our back carrier, which is like our belt loop. So we're going to press down all the way around using 3/8 of an inch, and then we're gonna get it as a press, and then we're gonna continue. Okay, as you can see, I pressed 3/8 of an inch all the way around, and I did 2 rows of top stitching on the right side, one to the edge, and then another one 1/4 inch away from the first one. So now what we're gonna do is we're gonna take this and we're gonna place it onto the back. So grab your back piece, and you should have transferred your markings. So you should have 4 dots right here, and your carrier should fit right there in between them all. So I'm going to pin this. So head over to the machine and we're going to do 1 edge stitch on the top and then 1 to the bottom. And then we're going to come back. All right, so once we put the back carrier on, we're going to put this to the side for just a moment. And we're going to focus in on our collar. So with the right sides facing, You're going to take your collar, and we're going to pin along the sides and then across the top. All right, so once you have everything pinned, we're going to stitch using 5/8 of an inch seam allowance along up one side, across the top, and then down the other side. All right, with 5/8 of an inch seam allowance, we're going to backstitch at the beginning and end. I'm going to pivot, and then continue across the top. Pivot one more time. Okay, so before we head back over to finish, you want to open up the collar a little bit, the side that you didn't stitch down, and we're going to stitch from dot here to the other dot right here on the other side. Just a basting stitch. Usually we would do this before, but I just thought about it. All right. Now we're going to continue. All right, so on the side that we left open, on the non-interface side, where we just did the basting stitch from dot to dot, you want to take your scissors and snip right to that dot on both sides. And then you want to trim that down to 3/8 of an inch. All right. We're going to later go to your ironing table, and we're going to press that up right where that stitching line is. But before we do that, we have to cut into our corners. And then I like to cut a little bit close at the tip. The other side, I'm gonna go ahead and trim some extra off too, across the side and top. All right, so press this up, and then we're going to turn our corners out. All right. Now go to your ironing table, give us a good press, and don't forget that this piece in the middle here is supposed to be turned in now, and press that down as well. Okay, once your collar is pressed, you want to take it and we're going to pin it onto our back piece. So you're going to pin at your notches first. You should have 2 right here in the center. And we're only pinning the inside piece, not the outside. You see, like just like here, just the facing. Then there should be a dot right there, that seam, that shoulder seam. Okay, so head over to the machine and only using the basting stitch. So only using a basting stitch, we're going to baste starting from here up until this point right here, and right where that part at we folded under, we're going to baste only on the facing, not the top part. And then we're going to finish on the other side. Do that and we're going to come right back. So 5/8 of an inch, we're going to baste. All right, so make sure you change your regular stitch to a basting stitch, which should be the longest stitch on your machine. And then we're going to backstitch at the beginning and end using 5/8 of an inch seam allowance. Backstitch at the end. Okay, so once you base your collar down onto your jumpsuits, we're going to work on our front facings. So if you look here, I went ahead and I pressed a 1/2 inch on the top. And you also can do a 1/2 inch basting stitch around the neckline on both sides if you have stretchy fabric. Mine's not that stretchy, so I'm not going to do that. But I am going to press it down a 1/2 inch. But before I do that, I'm going to press under along the curve a 1/4 inch. Once I do that, you turn that down a 1/2 inch, and then you want to stitch this down using an 1/8 inch seam allowance. Very close to the edge, sewing that down. You want to do both of them the same way. Once you do that, come back and we'll continue. All right, so before we continue, I also want to note that I finished the bottom with the serger. If you don't have a serger, you can use a zigzag stitch for every time I use the serger, just to let you know. And just to finish this off, because I won't have a chance to finish off anytime after this. So you want to grab your front of your jumpsuit. Okay, so once you have it laying flat like this, you want to take your zipper face down, unzip it, and on the right side right here, we're going to take it and we're going to place it 1 inch from the top right here. Right there where that corner is, you want to measure down 1 inch, and we're going to place where the zipper teeth start. Right there. And then we're going to place it a 1/4 inch away from the edge right there. And then we're going to pin all the way down. So once we have it pinned like this, we're going to go to the machine. We're just going to use a basting stitch all the way down. Okay, using a basting stitch. And I also switched my regular foot to a zipper foot. We're just going to base it all the way down. Back to the beginning and end. Alright. Back to the end. Okay, now that we're back from basting our zipper, you want to take one of your facings that go on this side here. And we're going to start with the neckline. Just to let you know, I went ahead and I did a regular stitch because we basted it before, but I went ahead and did a regular stitch just on the middle here. And then now this facing is going to start right there where we left off. And you can make some slits in here if your fabric doesn't stretch at all, but mine stretches pretty good. But if not, you can just put some little slits in the curve just so it can spread out. And now we're going to pin. So we're just sandwiching that collar together. Be sure not to pin your collar either on the other side. So just make sure you have that tucked out. I'm going to mark my dot. You should have a dot on both sides that you're matching up. I forgot to put it onto my interfacing, but there it is right there. That's so we know where to stop and pivot. There are 2 notches in the center right there. You want to pin there first, and then continue all the way down. Okay, now that we have it all pinned, we're going to use a regular stitch starting from the top of the facing, pivoting here all the way down to your dot, and then pivoting there. And then once you get 5/8 of an inch away from the edge, you're going to continue all the way down. Okay, so before I get started, like I said before, I've already stitched this down. If you haven't, stitch down the middle here using 5/8 of an inch seam allowance from one end to the other end. And then we're going to stitch the facing down back to the beginning and end. Just so you know, I've already switched back to my regular presser foot, and I'm using a regular stitch. pivot once you get 5/8 of an inch away. Continue. So all the way down till we get to that dot you see right here. You should have transferred it. And then pivot. All right, once you get 5/8 of an inch away from the edge, we're going to pivot back again and continue. Now resting my presser foot right where my zipper teeth is, so you can feel it just so you can keep it straight. Back to the end. Okay, now that we've stitched one of our facings down, we're going to do the other one. But first, go ahead and close your zipper as far as up you can go right now. And then we're going to pin this the same way we did the other side. So we're going to match the top of the facing right there where that slit started, and we're going to pin. Okay, so before heading over to the machine to stitch this down, we're going to stitch this a little bit different. We're not going to attach the zipper right now on this side, and we're going to use a different seam allowance. So if you look at your pattern piece, for your front pattern piece, there's a center front line. I want you to measure from the edge of the pattern to the center front line. So that's 1.25 inches. So we're going to be stitching 1.25 inches away from the edge. So I got me a longer ruler just to measure this a little bit better. So 1.25 inches away. Just gonna make a little stitch line. Right. So we're gonna stitch using our line here, which is 1.25 inches away, which is also our center front line. And once we get past this spot right here, it's going to automatically be 5/8 of an inch. So we're going to continue the rest of it the same exact way that we did the other side. Okay, starting at the bottom, we're going to stitch up and follow your guideline. And once you get past this should automatically be 5/8 of an inch. Just like that. And we're going to continue. Alright, pivot. Oh, mine's not quite 5/8 yet. There we go. Back to the end. Okay, so we're going to come back to the first side, which is the right side, and we're going to clip into this corner here, but don't go through your stitching. Right there where that dot is. And then we're going to trim some of this off for that corner. A little bit more. Move the zipper tape down a little bit. All right. And then a little bit here. and also in this corner. And then where the neck is, we're gonna clip some curves in here. It's pretty thick, so you might have to take your time or do one layer at a time. And also we're going to clip through all thicknesses right in the neck corners. One right there. And then the other one right here on this side. And this part, we're actually going to press up and inside. And then once you close it like that, you're gonna slip stitch it closed by hand. So let me get the other side down. And then for the left side, we're just going to trim a lot of this off down to about 3/8 of an inch or 1/2 inch. Okay, now you can go ahead and turn out your corners. And you got a nice little zipper edge right there. And it should look like this on your right side. Clip any loose threads you have. And for this side, you want to turn it down like that. So just to make a quick note, you're going to, like I said before, you're going to take the center of the neck piece right here and turn it all in, and you're gonna slip stitch the neck close, and then you're gonna turn the facing down on the inside, and you're gonna tack them down on the shoulder. One right here, and then on this side you're gonna tack that down. So you can do that later. So just head over to the iron board and give this a good press. Okay, now that everything is pressed, and we have the shoulders tacked down on both sides, I'm going to hand stitch this later. And we're going to stitch the other side of the zipper onto our left side. But before we do that, we're going to take the loose end of the zipper. If it's long, you want to fold it right sides facing and then tack it down. So when you have it attached, you can have a clean finish on the other side. But now we're going to do some pinning. So zip your zipper all the way up and make sure everything is equally matched. So take your pattern piece, and from your center line to your stitch line, you want to measure that. It equals 1 inch. And you want to use a marker that can come off, or a chalk that you can just brush off. Don't use anything permanent. So you want to measure out 1 inch. Switch to my bigger ruler. You just want to measure out 1 inch and put a small little line. And once you get up here, you're just going to go across the top there. And then right here to the bottom, you're just going to curve it right there from the middle of the crotch. Okay? All right. So now we're going to pin. This is going to be very important. So when you pin, you're going to have to get all layers on your left side. So you have your facing and you have your zipper tape right here. So you're going to hold on to that, and you're going to pin where your stitch line is. There we go. And we're just going to do that all the way up. Okay, now we're going to head over to the sewing machine and we're going to stitch, starting from our crotch all the way up. Be careful when you go across your zipper teeth. Follow your stitch line, pull your zipper pull down, and then stitch across the top. Okay, so make sure everything is flat. And just put your needle in right there in the center and back stitch at the beginning and end. Once you get close to your zipper teeth, you want to turn the wheel manually. And then you can continue. So I'm going to pull my zipper tape down since I'm getting close. Then pivot. And backstitch. Okay, now you have your zipper attached to your front. If you look close to my details, this is not on the pattern, so I just added it to keep the whole aesthetic of the design. Instead of one row, I went ahead and did another row outside of that one. And then I did 2 rows here at the bottom, and I sticks very close to the edge. So that's just a little style detail if you like to add it. Next, we're gonna attach our sleeves. So just put this to the side for just a moment. And for your sleeves, okay, so for the sleeve, you're gonna do 2 rows of basting stitch, starting at 1 set of notches. You're gonna backstitch at the beginning and sew all the way up to the other side, and you don't backstitch here. You want to keep these threads loose on the other end. So you're going to do 1 row a 1/2 inch away, and then a 1/4 inch away on the inside of that one. You're going to do another row. Once you do your basting stitches, come back and we'll gather them so we can attach it to our jumpsuit. Okay, now that we have 2 rows of basting stitches, you're going to take your threads and you're just going to spread that gathering. So you want to do it just enough so you get a little curve right there at that sleeve cap. So you want to just grab your jumpsuit. When right side is facing, you want to pin at your notches first. You should have 1 notch to match the 1 notch at the front, and 2 notches to match the 2 notches as your back piece. You should have a dot at the center and also on both sides. Okay, so you want to head over to your sewing machine and we're going to stitch using 5/8 of an inch seam allowance all the way across. So using 5/8 of an inch seam allowance, we're going to backstitch the beginning and end. Okay, you can go ahead and finish off this raw edge with a serger or using your zigzag stitch. And once you do that, you can attach your other sleeve the same exact way. Okay, now that we have both sleeves attached right here, I went ahead and finished my seam off. And also, I finished the seam off on both sides of my side seams, up under the sleeve and all the way down. And also on my inseam too. So next, I've already pinned my side seam. I pinned here, I pinned at my underarm, I pinned at my notches on the side, and then all the way down. You want to pin your other side the same exact way. And this is simply one big long straight line. So I'm not gonna show this on camera. So just go to the machine and stitch using 5/8 of an inch seam allowance all the way down. And then once you do that, you're going to move to your inseam and do the exact same thing. You want to pin at your center crotch and then all the way down your pant leg. And you're going to use 5/8 of an inch seam allowance for both sides as well. Once you have both your side seams and your inseams done, I'm going to show you how to finish off the hem of your sleeve and also the hem of your pant leg. And then we'll move along to our belt. Okay, now that I have my inseam and my out seam done on both sides, we're going to finish off the sleeve. So once you've sewn both the inseam and out seam, you should have pressed your seams open. So once you press them open like this, you're going to fold under like that, 2 inches. So be sure you do right at 2 inches all the way around. And once you do that, we're going to fold again another 2 inches. So after that, you're going to stitch 1/4 of an inch away from the fold line right here. So all the way around, you want to stitch 1/4 of an inch away from the fold line, and then you're going to do the other sleeve the same exact way and come back and we'll continue. Okay, so once you stitched around 1/4 inch away from the edge, you want to pull it out and then flip the sleeve hem all the way out, and you'll get a little tuck right there. All right, so do the other sleeve the same exact way. And after you do that, you want to move it down to your hem of your pants. So once you get to the hem of your pants, only thing you're going to do is fold under 1/4 inch and then fold again a 1/4 inch, and you can either top stitch it or you can slip stitch it. All right, so once you do that, you're all done with your jumpsuit, and I'm going to show you how to finish off your belt. Okay, with your belt, I've already pinned it right sides together. Of course, one of them is going to be interfaced. You're going to stitch all the way around. Okay, so you want to pick a spot and you want to start all the way across the back, all the way down, all the way across the front, and then once you end up back to where you started, you want to leave like a 2 or 3 inch opening so we can turn it around once we're done. Go ahead and stitch around and come back and we'll continue. Okay, I stitched all the way around and I left my 2 inch opening right here. So what we're going to do first is just to clip off the corners. And now using some type of point turner or thin object, you want to take your belt and just turn it right side out. Okay, so once you turn it right side out, you want to push out your corners on both ends and give it a really good press. And then that opening that you left, you want to slip stitch it. Trying to find mine. You want to slip stitch this close by hand. And then after that, you're just going to put that around your belt buckle, just like that, and then stitch across a few times to have that secure. And for your belt holes, you want to try your belt on to make sure you place them in the right place. And like I said before, you can either use eyelets. Obviously, you have to do a matching color. I have silver. I would use silver if I'm using these, but these are the only ones I could find. So you just basically follow directions that come in the pack with these. Or like I'm doing, I'm using a tool to create perfect holes. So whichever you prefer, it doesn't matter. And once you do all that, you're all done. All right, congratulations. You just finished your own vintage jumpsuit. Be sure to tag me on Instagram whenever you post it at Norris Danta Ford. All right, see you next time.